Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we'll discuss week 15 of 2023. Let's get going. Well, week 15 was relatively uneventful right up until the end. The days are getting longer and warmer. The evenings are still pretty chilly, so we haven't put any of our nightshades or anything in. It's looking more and more like it's going to be the last week of April or the first week of May before we do so. Just the end of week 15, it got down to the upper 30s. So I think the low that day was like 37 or 38. So, you know, our tomatoes, eggplants, that sort of stuff, they don't care for that kind of weather much. Another thing that happened was we didn't get a lot of rain, so we did end up having to water quite a bit. We did have a storm system move through with really high winds that broke some of our flowers and that type of stuff. But in this zone, that's just to be expected. That's how it goes, I guess. With all that being said, let's just go take a look through the gardens and let's see what we got done this week. One thing I did want to show this week real fast was we went through and we thinned out a lot of the greens from here and we ate a batch of them. They were actually really good. They weren't bitter at all, so I was really surprised. Most of the time, if you eat greens in the spring, a lot of them turn out to be bitter. Maybe it's because it hasn't quite hit the hard heat of the summer. So that was good. This is done really well. I'm really impressed with the way this new bed has gone so far. But the reason I wanted to start here was what we've done is we've gone through and started to reinforce all the runoff areas in our gardens. We say this a lot on the homestead, but our yard is on a relatively severe slope. That's the reason we kind of went with all of these tiered beds, is to make sure that we didn't have runoff that would go through and wash out our gardens. And that's kind of led us to the raised beds and so on and so forth. And it's been a really good investment. But with it only being the third year of this bed, you can see earlier right through here, a lot of it had run off. There was a lot of areas that had settled. And it's kind of a pain in the rear end pushing a wheelbarrow or anything through here when there were holes. So I just went through, took some topsoil, filled it all in, watered it in real good, and then went through with the tamper. The one thing we learned from experience is you want to make sure that you tamp everything in really well on a slope like this. If not, the first rain is just going to wash everything away. While we're here real fast, I'll show you in between our pollinators, since they won't really grow to a large size for, it'll probably be mid-June before they start getting close to their full potential. We went ahead and put the radishes in. These will come out by, early May, early to mid-May, probably, these radishes. So they'll be out of there before the pollinators need the room. So we thought, what the heck, right? We might as well use it. Our onions and things are doing well, all of our beans. So let's take a look at this end though. This is where we put a lot of the work in. And I know without a before and after, it's hard to see how much actual dirt that we brought down here, but it was quite a bit. I had a full load brought in at the beginning of the spring, and I have used quite a bit of it beforehand, but I'm almost done with the load. So I wanted to sort of wait until we got another big rain before I used too much of it. You can see on this other side, we also filled in all of the holes that naturally happened. The thing that got beat down the most from that wind though were these dill plants in here. I couldn't believe it. Several of them broke the fronds off of them. We also have something coming in, you can see those stems right there, and just wiping everything out. We had planted kale in here as an experiment, and I wanted to show this. So here it's mid-April, and the pest pressure already is starting to take our plants out. That's okay though. I watered this morning, and I'll go through whenever the sun kind of hits and dries it up a little bit, and I'll de-eat everything, and that should take care of any worms or whatnot that we have eaten our plants. But we lost this deal down here, and whatever it is apparently likes marigolds too. You can see it took a couple of those limbs off. So staying on with the dirt real fast, you can see we built the sides of this up, and the idea is going to be over time I want to fill this in where it's got the bit of a concave shaped so that we can funnel the water straight down here and out. And as long as the berms on the front side of the garden hold up, we shouldn't really have any issues getting all of the water to kind of flow this way. This should only hold the water that, you know, falls in the actual garden itself. Everything else we're trying to get to funnel on the outside of the gardens. So speaking of funneling, I just wanted to show what we've done here. So we put, 2 years ago, we put this cast iron pot in. It's done really good anchoring this side. We've got a lot of rock underneath of it so that we don't have to worry about it washing away. And then now we've built over on this side of it. We have started to mound this up, and I've reinforced underneath that with some boards so that hopefully the erosion won't go too far. And over time, it'll do the same thing, sort of a bevel or a concave through this area. And I want the water to run right down there between that bottom bed and the elderberries, right at that fig tree if I can make it work. Well, I have to admit that I'm pretty excited about where we are overall at this point of the year on the homestead. Last year, I kind of felt like I was chasing my tail, as the man says. I never felt like I was caught up or that I had time to do any of my secondary or tertiary projects. But as of right now, until the next rain comes, then I can move the rest of the dirt. But I can start working on my secondary projects at this point, right? I can start dragging the bamboo out. I can burn all of the stuff from the winter time. So I'm really looking forward to this next couple weeks, kind of take a deep breath and kind of, I guess, the calm before the storm, you know, kind of get yourself ready for the busy period that's coming up soon. So right now what I'd like to do is step in here to the top garden and let's talk about what's going to happen over the next couple weeks. So the challenge over the next 2 weeks is going to be, how do we eat all of the food that we need to come out of here before we plant our summer garden? So our cabbages, while they're not huge, the heads in there are starting to develop. So one way or the other, they may not be the biggest cabbages, but we will have cabbages to eat. So these will come out, I would guess, the first weekend of May, and then mid-May we'll go through and plant all of our peppers. Our peppers are the last things that we plant. They really like the heat, so we leave them in the greenhouse until the last possible moment. This bed here specifically needs to go. It's got a lot of good food in it. We've eaten most of the onions. We've got a couple left, and we're gonna save those for, we have some beans that we're gonna eat this week, and they will go delicious with those. But check out the size of some of these radishes in here. Whenever you get in here and look, these radishes are really good size. Not only that, but they're nice and sweet. They haven't quite started turning spicy yet. So actually they're easier this year to give away than they were last year, and I think a lot of that has to do with, more folks have tried them. We also went through and thinned out our mustard greens a little bit when we did the greens in the new bed in the old garden. They are really good. Like I said, they're not bitter at this point, so we will probably take these greens out middle of week 16 and cook them with some neck bones, as they are phenomenal. And I'm not sure about those beets down there. They're not really forming any type of head, but they are delicious in tossed salad, so we'll use them. This bed down here, we need to go through relatively quickly as well. However, because this bed is going to hold our eggplant and squash, we don't have to get rid of things quite as fast. In fact, we can leave those beets right there, that row in the middle. We'll leave those beets in probably until middle of May or so, just because we won't need the room. The squash won't start reaching, like their large state, taking up their full capacity of the garden space, probably until the 1st of June. And because of that, I'm gonna try to use as much of the space as possible. You can see this lettuce. That lettuce was cut about a week ago, and we'll be able to cut it at the end of the week, and then we'll start prepping the beds and such from there. Another bed that's got to go is this guy right here. Now these radishes, believe it or not, were planted 3 weeks after the other ones, and you can see they're also starting to get quite large. So we'll be eating a lot of radishes. We'll be giving a lot of the radishes away. Those down there, believe it or not, we have got really good sized turnips underneath all of that. So what we'll probably do is just let this bed go right up until the last week of April, and then we'll pull everything. Because really what we'll be able to do out of here is use the beet greens to go in a salad. We'll be able to eat the turnips and the turnip greens. We'll take the turnip greens out when we do some of those mustard greens and just kind of cook them together. That'll be fantastic. And that should wipe this bed out. This bed this year, I believe, is going to house our zucchini. And again, our zucchini will go in that last week of April. So these will have to come out, you know, probably next weekend or midweek the week after. And then this bed down here is going to be we're permanently going to have the kale and the chard in it. We are going to work our way through the lettuces here over the next week and a half or so. This bed here isn't quite as big of a hurry as the others, only because all it's going to grow are the kale and the chard. We also have extra rows of lettuce to go in and bookend either end of them whenever we get done cutting these guys. But as I mentioned, the wind, you'll remember that last week we had 5 plants in here. The basil plant on this end here and the basil plant on that end down there were both blown over and broken at the roots. As sad as it is to say, though, it's good that that's really the only bad thing. We lost a couple dill plants and a couple basil plants. We have extra of both, but the wind gusts that we had here were crazy. They were, I believe, mid-50s. And it was about 20 to 25 miles an hour all day with the wind gusts, you know, like I said, up in the mid-50s. It was really bad. There were a lot of limbs and stuff down in the area. We were quite fortunate here on the homestead. But that about wraps it up here for the top garden. Look at those carrots. Just a couple things I wanted to elaborate on here at the end of the video. I had mentioned that we had already started watering a bit. We're taking a bit of a different approach this year. We're going to water early and often. We try to water every day that there's no rain. We do it like from a minimal approach. This Wednesday, I've got a watering guide coming up to kind of walk everyone through what our approach is going to be. After last year, I think everybody's a little bit on guard as far as the weather is concerned. So we're going to make sure we are proactive this year instead of reactive when it comes to watering and how we approach the summertime. Another thing that I wanted to mention is we talked about the pest pressure already. So we've still got DE that we've bought. If you haven't got the stuff yet, I would highly recommend doing so. If this year is anything like last year, the pests and diseases and things are going to be kind of out of control. Because we got a good jump on them last year, we were able to still get quite a bit from our garden spaces. I believe we're going to start the same thing this year already. Again, we've already lost 2 dill plants to pests. We've also had a couple of our pollinators eaten down. So we're going to go ahead and just start a light regimen of neem oil and DE. Now here on the homestead, we try to keep everything as organic as possible, but I'm not one of those folks that are not going to use a pesticide from time to time if I absolutely have to. We try not to because of the bees, and we bring in so many beneficial pollinators that we don't want to wipe those populations out. But the idea of growing a garden is to get food, right? So that's just something to consider as we start heading into the warmer months. You know, with May comes a lot of sunshine, a lot of water, and a lot of problems. With all that being said, until next time, I hope everyone takes care of themselves. Peace.